The human starship Valiant Dawn drifted through the violet clouds of Zithera's upper atmosphere, its hull glowing under twin suns. Commander Kale stood on the command deck, armored from head to toe in sleek silver plating. His helmet visor reflected the endless floating cities below, giant islands held aloft by magnetic fields, covered with glass spires and shining gardens. For Kale, it was more than a diplomatic mission. Humanity had only recently entered this region of space, and Zithera was a world of power and wealth. The Zitherians were known for elegance, advanced science, and a pride that bordered on arrogance. Few outsiders had ever walked inside their royal palace. Today would change that. "Commander," said Lieutenant Aaron, his second in command. "Palace guards have signaled docking approval. They're rolling out the Crimson landing path." Kyle's voice, calm and steady, carried through his helmet speaker. "Good. Maintain formation and keep communications clear. No mistakes today. We're guests, not conquerors." The Valiant Dawn touched down on a polished landing platform that hovered above the capital city. Zitherian banners shimmered in the wind, long ribbons of gold and sapphire. As Kale stepped onto the platform, he noticed how the Zitherian guards looked at him. Their tall, slender figures wore ornate armor, more decorative than practical. Their faces, pale blue with faint silver markings, carried the expression of people unused to seeing strangers they considered equals. Trumpets of crystal sounded, and the palace gates opened. She appeared. Princess Lyra, daughter of Zithera's High Monarch, walked down the marble steps with grace that seemed almost unreal. She wore a flowing robe of white and emerald, her skin glowing faintly under the sunlight. A crown of delicate star-shaped gems rested on her brow. Her eyes, bright as liquid silver, studied Kale with sharp curiosity. Whispers ran through the Zitherian court. Few had seen a human before, fewer still one who wore full combat armor in a royal meeting. Kale stopped at the base of the stairs and bowed slightly, the motion stiff in his plated suit. "Princess Lyra, I bring greetings from Earth and its people." She tilted her head, smiling, though not warmly. "So this is humanity's champion, a soldier wrapped in metal." Her voice was melodic, but her words held challenge. "Tell me, Commander Kale, do you wonder what lies beneath this armor I wear?" She gestured to her ceremonial breastplate, thin and shining. Kale's reply came without hesitation. "No, Princess. I wonder what lies within your heart." The words caught her off guard. The court went silent. Even the wind seemed to still. Lyra's silver eyes narrowed as though measuring him for the first time. She had expected a nervous answer, or a boast about human strength. Not this. Recovering quickly, she gave a soft laugh. "A careful answer, but I sense there is more to you than polite phrases." She turned and walked toward the towering palace gates. "Come, human commander. Let us see if you are truly as strange as you sound." Kale followed, flanked by guards whose long spears hummed with contained energy. The palace interior glowed with living crystal walls and winding streams of light that floated like ribbons through the air. It felt less like walking through halls and more like stepping through an endless dream. As they passed giant windows, Kale saw the Zitherian capital spread out far below. Bridges of glass connected floating towers, and transport ships glided, like silver fish in the sky. Humanity had nothing so beautiful yet. Lyra glanced back at him as they entered the royal audience chamber. "Tell me, Commander, why does humanity hide behind such heavy armor? Are you all so fragile that you must seal yourselves away?" Kale kept his voice steady. "Armor protects, but not just against weapons. It shields the person inside from fear. Sometimes it shields others from fear as well. When people see this suit, they see confidence, even if the man inside is just a man." Lyra's brow lifted slightly. She seemed to be deciding whether to believe him. "Interesting. Zitherians have no need for such illusions. Our strength is seen in our blood, in our lineage, in the power of our minds. What need have we for heavy shells? Because someday," Kyle said evenly, "you may face something that can crack shells, tear banners, and shatter pride. And on that day, what will matter most is not what people see on the outside, but what you carry inside. Her lips curved in a faint smile, though it was difficult to read whether it was amusement or respect. You speak boldly for one standing in my father's hall. I speak as someone who's seen too many worlds burn, Kale replied softly. Lyra stopped walking. For a moment, she just looked at him, her eyes sharp as blades. It was the first sign that the playful curiosity had turned into true attention. Perhaps, she said at last, we shall learn what lies beneath your own armor, Commander. But first, you will dine with me. We have much to discuss. The dining hall glimmered with floating lights. Instead of tables, small circular platforms drifted in the air, each bearing elegant dishes of Zetherian fruits, breads, and luminous drinks. Kale remained in his armor, drawing more curious glances from courtiers. Lyra took a seat across from him on a hovering disk. Tell me of Earth, she said. Is it true your oceans still storm and your deserts still burn? I've heard humanity fights even its own planet. Kale nodded slightly. We struggle, yes, but we survive. That's what we do best. Survive? Lyra tasted the word as if it were strange. We Zetherians do not merely survive. We flourish. We perfect. We shape our world to our will. Kale's voice was calm. And what happens if your world stops obeying? She stared at him, then laughed softly, shaking her head. No wonder your species is known for conflict. You see threats everywhere, even in paradise. Kale's tone hardened, but only a little. Paradise is fragile, Princess. It only takes one shadow to cover the brightest sky. Later that evening, after formalities ended, Kale walked alone through the guest quarters prepared for him. His armor hummed softly as its systems powered down into rest mode. He replayed every moment of the meeting, every glance of the princess, every whisper in the hall. She had tested him, and she wasn't finished. Unknown to Kale, Lyra stood on a balcony high above, watching the human quarters below. Beside her, a Zetherian advisor spoke in hushed tones. He is bold, too bold. Should we trust this species? Lyra's gaze stayed fixed on the armored figure below. Boldness is not weakness. He does not fear us, yet he does not boast. That makes him interesting. Interesting can be dangerous, the advisor warned. Perhaps, Lyra murmured. But sometimes danger is the best teacher, she looked up at the darkening horizon, where faint glimmers of light flickered among the stars, signals of ships approaching Zithera's orbit. But these were not ceremonial escorts. Their patterns were strange, their signatures unregistered. Lyra's expression tightened. Something was coming, and perhaps the man inside that strange human armor would prove more valuable than she first imagined. The next morning, the palace shimmered with pale light as Zithera's twin suns rose over the horizon. Commander Kale awoke inside his guest chamber, the soft hum of his armor systems filling the quiet. Zetherian attendants had offered to provide lighter clothing for comfort, but Kyle politely refused. The suit was more than just protection. It was his identity here, and a shield against unknown dangers. Kale moved to the balcony and looked out over the floating city. Silver towers hung in the air like jewels connected by glowing bridges. Far below, smaller islands floated lazily in the azure clouds. It was peaceful. Too peaceful, Kale thought. Peace often made people blind to threats. A chime echoed through the room. The door opened without a sound, revealing Princess Lyra herself, flanked by two guards carrying ceremonial spears. She wore a dark robe of midnight blue with emerald patterns at the edges. Commander Kale, she said, her voice calm but sharp. I hope Zithera's hospitality pleases you. Kale inclined his head. It does, Princess. Your people are generous. Her silver eyes studied him. Your armor, you never remove it? Even when you sleep? Kale's tone was even. It keeps me ready. In space, danger doesn't wait. For comfort. Lyra gave a small, curious smile. How very human. Always preparing for storms even when the sky is clear. She gestured toward the hallway. Walk with me. There are things I want to show you. They moved through crystal corridors lit by floating lights. Guards followed at a distance, their eyes sharp. Lyra led Kale into the Royal Archives, a massive hall where information floated as glowing symbols and images in the air. With a motion of her hand, the light shifted to reveal a map of Zithera's surrounding space. "Do you see this?" Lyra asked. 3 nights ago, our outer patrols detected unknown signals near the border of our system. We assumed it was nothing, perhaps wandering traders, but the pattern repeats. Kale stepped closer, scanning the glowing shapes. "These aren't traders. The movement is too precise. Whoever they are, they're watching you." Lyra frowned. "And you know this, how?" Kale's voice was firm. "Because I've seen it before. Out on the fringe worlds, unmarked ships stalk colonies before striking, silent, patient, testing defenses." Lyra's expression turned serious. "We Zitherians have nothing to fear. Our fleets are unmatched." Kyle's gaze remained on the glowing map. "Every fleet has weaknesses, even yours." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but in thought. "You sound as if you expect an attack." "I expect trouble," Kyle replied. "The only question is when it arrives." As they left the archives, Lyra slowed her pace. "Commander Kale, yesterday you said armor protects people not just from weapons but from fear. Do humans really carry so much fear inside them?" Kale looked at her through his visor. "Fear isn't weakness. It's a warning. It tells us what matters, what we can't afford to lose. Humans learn to live with it, even turn it into strength." Lyra considered this quietly. Zitherians were raised to show no fear, to believe in the perfection of their own kind. Kale's words unsettled her, yet somehow, they felt true. She led him to a balcony high above the palace gardens. The view stretched for miles, the twin suns painting the sky gold and violet. "My people look at you," she said softly, "and they see only metal. They wonder what kind of creature hides beneath." Kale turned his helmet slightly toward her. "What do you see?" Lyra hesitated, then answered honestly. "I see someone different. Someone who speaks as if he has already faced the darkness he warns us about." Before Kale could reply, a Zitherian officer rushed onto the balcony, bowing quickly. "Your Highness, unmarked vessels have appeared near our orbital gates. They refuse to answer our signals." Lyra's eyes sharpened. "How many?" "5 ships," the officer said. "Small but fast. They are holding position." Kyle stepped forward. "Let me see your control room." Lyra hesitated. Zitherian command centers were sacred, not meant for outsiders. But something in Kale's voice carried a weight she could not ignore. "Very well," she said. "Come with me." The palace control chamber was alive with glowing panels and hovering projection displays. Officers in shimmering uniforms worked quickly, exchanging rapid signals. A massive screen showed the unknown ships drifting at the edge of Zithera's space. "They're scanning our defenses," Kyle said at once. "Look at the energy pulses. They're mapping your response time." A senior Zitherian commander spoke coldly. "We will intercept and destroy them at once." Kyle shook his head. "If you do, they'll know exactly how strong you are. And they'll send something bigger next time." The Zitherian commander glared at him. "And what do you suggest, human?" Kale pointed at the display. "Jam their scans. Feed them false readings. Make them think your defenses are weaker than they really are. Let them underestimate you." Lyra watched closely as Kale spoke, impressed by his calm confidence. She gave a single nod. "Do as he says," she ordered. The commander hesitated, but obeyed. A moment later, the control room filled with soft tones as Zitherian systems scrambled the enemy scans. On the screen, the strange vessels paused, as if confused, then slowly turned away and vanished into the blackness of space. Kale folded his arms. "They'll be back, and next time they won't just be watching." Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes bright with a new understanding. "You saved us from revealing our strength. I did not expect that from someone wearing a shell of metal. Kale's tone was steady. My armor doesn't make me smart. Humans learn to think fast because we've had to survive without perfect worlds like this one. She studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, Commander, perhaps there is more beneath your armor than I guessed. Perhaps even more than you realize yourself. That evening, Lyra invited Kale to a private chamber deep within the palace. There were no guards this time, only soft lights and walls covered in shifting crystal patterns. She gestured for him to sit. Commander, she said, her voice more thoughtful than before, our people judge worth by appearance, power, beauty, lineage. These are everything. But you speak as if none of that matters. Kale's voice softened. On Earth, we don't always have the luxury to care about appearances. When storms hit, when machines fail, when enemies come, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, beautiful or plain. What matters is what you can do, and whether you have the heart to stand when it counts. Lyra leaned closer, curious now, rather than challenging. And what lies beneath your armor, Commander Kyle? Kyle didn't hesitate. A man who will fight to protect anyone who needs it, even if they don't think they need him. For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. Then, almost to herself, she murmured, perhaps that is the kind of strength Zithara has forgotten. Outside the palace, unseen by either of them, a faint glimmer crossed the night sky. One of the mysterious ships had returned, hiding in the shadow of Zithara's outer moons, watching, waiting. The next day, Zithara's capital city glittered under the twin suns. The mysterious ships had vanished again, but tension filled the palace halls. Princess Lyra had summoned Commander Kale early in the morning, and he arrived wearing his full armor as always. Commander, Lyra said as they walked along a glass bridge high above the city, our council still doubts you. They think your warnings are human exaggeration. They say you speak of danger because that is what humans always see. Kyle looked down at the drifting clouds far below. Sometimes people don't believe the storm is coming until they feel the first drop of rain. Lyra's lips curved faintly. Then show them why they should believe you. Prove that humanity is more than a voice wrapped in metal. Kyle tilted his helmet. How do you suggest I do that? Lyra stopped and turned toward him. By completing the trials of Zithara, few outsiders have even attempted them. They measure strength, speed, and mind. But most of all, they measure spirit. If you pass, no one will doubt your words again. Kale gave a single nod. All right, I'll do it. But I won't remove my armor. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Afraid to let us see the man inside? Not afraid, Kyle said evenly. Just not here to entertain curiosity. She studied him a moment, then smiled. Very well, Commander. Keep your armor, but the trials will not care what you wear. The arena floated high above the capital, a massive circular platform surrounded by thousands of Zitharians. Transparent walls kept the fierce winds at bay, and hovering cameras drifted like silver birds recording every moment. Lyra sat in a royal balcony overlooking the arena floor. Courtiers whispered around her. Some doubted the human. Others hoped he would fail and leave Zithara's affairs to Zitharians alone. Kale stepped onto the smooth platform. His armor gleamed in the sunlight, silver against the vast blue sky. A voice rang out from a floating sphere above. First trial, the maze of blades. The arena floor shifted, pieces sliding apart like puzzle tiles. Suddenly, Kyle stood at the entrance of a twisting maze filled with moving barriers, rotating platforms, and thin energy blades sweeping back and forth. Zitharian challengers usually relied on speed and agility to dodge the traps. Kyle was heavier and slower. From her balcony, Lyra leaned forward. Can he even move fast enough? One advisor murmured. Kyle entered the maze calmly. Instead of rushing, he watched the pattern of the blades. He moved step by step, using timing and calculation rather than speed. When a platform spun too quickly, he used his armored weight to anchor himself. When a barrier closed off his path, he climbed over it instead of waiting. Minutes later, he reached the center. The crowd murmured in surprise. Few had ever passed without taking a single scratch. Second trial, the Gauntlet of Stone. Columns rose from the arena floor, and great crystal boulders swung from glowing chains. The goal? Reach the far, and while avoiding crushing blows. Zetherians prided themselves on precision jumping, using their light bodies to dart between danger. Kale studied the moving stones. His armor made quick leaps impossible, but he used the obstacles differently. When a boulder swung toward him, instead of avoiding it, he braced himself, absorbed the impact, and pushed it aside to clear his path. When a column threatened to collapse, he used its falling weight to launch himself forward. By the time he reached the end, the crowd was no longer whispering. They were cheering. Lyra's eyes shone with surprise. Final trial, the test of mind. The arena changed again, forming a platform covered in glowing tiles. A complex pattern of lights appeared and vanished in seconds. The challenger had to step on the correct sequence to cross safely. One wrong move and the floor would drop, forcing the challenger to start again. Now he will fail, one counselor said confidently. Humans rely on strength, not intellect. Kyle memorized the pattern quickly. He didn't step forward right away. Instead, he closed his eyes, visualizing the glowing shapes in his head. Then he walked the path. Slow, steady, precise. Halfway through, the pattern shifted. Gasps echoed through the arena. Even Zetherian challengers sometimes fell here, but Kale adapted instantly, recalculating with every step. Where Zetherians depended on perfection, Kale relied on flexibility. When the lights changed again, he knelt and pressed his armored hand against the floor, marking points with tiny scratches to guide his path. With calm determination, Kale reached the other side. The arena roared with approval. Even the doubtful counselors stood in astonishment. After the trials, Kale stood on the platform as Lyra descended from her balcony. Her silver robe flowed in the wind as she approached. "You passed all three," she said, her voice carrying pride. "And something else, something warmer. No outsider has done this in living memory." Kyle's visor hid his expression, but his voice was steady. "It wasn't about winning, it was about showing you how humans think. We adapt. We don't have perfect worlds or perfect bodies, so we learn to use what we have." Lyra nodded slowly. "You've given my people something to think about. They saw your strength, yes, but more than that, they saw your mind." The crowd cheered again as Kale raised one armored hand in acknowledgement. That night, the palace held a quiet celebration. Zetherian music filled the grand hall, soft and shimmering like starlight. Courtiers who once looked at Kale with suspicion now approached with cautious respect. Lyra stood beside him near a balcony overlooking the glowing city. "Today, you showed them what lies beneath your armor, even without taking it off," she said softly. Kyle shook his head. "All I showed them is what humanity does when things get hard. We don't give up." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "I believe you now about the danger. If those unknown ships return, my people will listen to you." Kale's voice grew serious. "They will return. And when they do, they won't come to test you. They'll come to strike." Lyra's silver eyes darkened. "Then we must be ready. And I will stand beside you when that day comes." Far from the palace, in the cold darkness beyond Zithra's moons, the mysterious ships gathered again. They had studied the Zetherian defenses and now prepared for their next move. Inside one vessel, artificial voices spoke in perfect harmony. Defenses weaker than projected. Unexpected variable. Human. Presence. Adjust strategy. Proceed to phase 2. The ships vanished into deep shadow, leaving only faint traces on Zetherian sensors, too faint to raise alarm. Back in the palace, Lyra walked alone through a quiet corridor. She thought about the trials, about Kale's calm voice and unshakable resolve. Her people valued flawless control and polished perfection, but Kale had triumphed through adaptability, through accepting imperfection and turning it into strength. She smiled faintly to herself. Perhaps she whispered. There is more beneath human armor than I imagined. Cliffhanger for Part 3. Kyle wins respect by passing Zetharian trials using human adaptability, but the mysterious fleet prepares to attack, moving to a far more dangerous stage. 2 days after the trials, Zethara's twin suns rose over a sky that seemed far too calm. Commander Kale stood on the palace's highest balcony with Princess Lyra beside him. Below them, the floating city shimmered with silver towers and bright gardens, but Kale's thoughts were elsewhere. They're coming soon, Kale said quietly, watching the horizon. Your unknown ships won't keep waiting. Lyra glanced at him, her silver eyes calm but sharp. Our fleets are ready. You've convinced the council to listen, but are you certain these invaders will attack openly? Kale shook his head. I'm certain they'll test you again, and this time they won't turn back. As if to prove his words, a Zetharian officer rushed onto the balcony, bowing quickly. Your Highness, unidentified fleet emerging near the outer moon. 9 ships this time, larger than before. They are moving toward the capital at high speed. Lyra's expression hardened. Prepare the Royal Defense Squadrons. Commander Kyle, will you stand with us? Kyle's voice was steady. Always. The call to arms within minutes. The palace control chamber lit up with activity. Zetharian. Officers worked quickly at glowing panels, transmitting commands to fleet commanders. On a central display, 9 black ships appeared, moving in a perfect formation, their energy signatures cold and precise. These are not traitors, Lyra said firmly. They are machines. Kyle nodded. Automated warships. I've seen their kind. They calculate every move, but they don't understand improvisation. That's where humans excel. Lyra turned to her commanders. Link Commander Kale to our tactical systems. He will advise during the battle. The Zetharian officers hesitated. No outsider had ever been allowed into their military networks. But Lyra's voice left no room for argument. Do it! Kale's armor connected instantly. Holographic symbols flashed across his visor, showing fleet positions, weapon ranges, and energy flows. He spoke with calm authority. Don't meet them head-on, Kale ordered. Their formation is designed for a direct fight. Draw them off balance. Make them chase small targets, then hit from the sides. The battle begins high above Zethara. The sky turned bright with energy trails as Zetharian warships launched from floating docks. Sleek and shining, they curved into wide arcs, forming 3 wings. Kale's voice guided them through his secure link. The enemy fleet responded with perfect precision, locking into a spear-shaped pattern and driving forward. They fired pulses of dark energy that sliced through the upper clouds. One Zetharian frigate was hit early, spinning out of control, but Kale's quick orders saved it from destruction. Break formation, Kale commanded. Make them chase, you one by one. Don't give them the target they expect. Scytharian captains obeyed, splitting into smaller groups. The enemy ships adjusted instantly, but the perfect spearhead began to weaken. They were forced to spread out. Lyra, watching from the palace control chamber, gripped the edge of the command table. Your tactics are working. You confuse them. Kyle's voice stayed calm. Machines hate surprise. Turning the tide, Kyle requested control of a small Zetharian patrol craft. Without hesitation, Lyra approved it. He boarded the craft within minutes, still wearing his full armor. The ship's systems meshed with his suit, allowing him to fly with precision. In the thick of battle, Kale darted his craft between the enemy ships, using human instincts to make moves no machine would predict. Sharp rolls, sudden climbs, reckless-looking maneuvers that a computer would never calculate as efficient. 2 enemy vessels broke formation to pursue him. Now, Kyle ordered. Zetharian fighters swooped from above, destroying the isolated ships with concentrated fire. Lyra watched from the palace, astonished at Kale's skill. He's not just fighting them, she whispered to an aide. He's teaching us how to think differently. The enemy adapts. But the enemy fleet began changing tactics. Their movements grew less rigid, as if the machines were learning from Kale's maneuvers. They're copying your unpredictability, Lyra warned through the communication link. I expected that, Kale replied. That's why we moved to Phase 2. He guided Zetherian forces into tight formations that looked weak, tempting the enemy to attack. When the machines closed in, hidden gun platforms on the city's floating towers activated, striking them from unexpected angles. 4 more enemy ships went down in bursts of silent light, but the largest ship, a black command carrier, pushed through the defenses heading straight for the capital. Its weapons glowed brighter than the suns above. "The final strike, focus everything on that carrier," Kyle shouted. "If it falls, the rest will scatter." Zetherian warships dove toward the massive vessel, but their weapons barely scratched its thick armor. The carrier's forward cannon charged for a devastating shot, aimed directly at the palace itself. Kyle pushed his craft to maximum speed, weaving through the enemy's fire. He dove under the carrier's hull where its shields were weakest. "Give me power to the magnetic lance," he called to the Zetherian engineers linked to his suit. "Done," Lyra's voice replied. "Kyle, you have 1 shot." Kyle's craft charged its weapon. At the last second, he spun upward and fired into the carrier's underbelly. The magnetic blast tore through the hull, overloading its engines. The giant ship shuddered, its glow fading before exploding in a silent flash. The remaining enemy ships lost coordination instantly, retreating into deep space. Aftermath. The skies over Zithera cleared as the last enemy vessel vanished beyond sensor range. Cheers erupted across the palace control chamber. The capital city was safe, for now. Kyle guided his damaged craft back to the landing platform. Lyra was waiting as he stepped out, his silver armor scorched from the fight. "You saved my people," Lyra said softly. "Not just with your strength, but with your mind. You saw what we could not." Kyle removed his helmet for the first time. His face was calm, marked with exhaustion, but unbroken. "You saved your people too, Princess. They trusted you enough to try something new." For a moment, the two stood in silence. Around them, Zetherian guards bowed in respect, something no outsider had ever earned. That evening, the council met in the palace's grand chamber. The elder leaders praised Kale for his bravery and tactical skill. Lyra spoke strongly in his favor, urging an alliance between humans and Zetherians, but Kale's words were cautious. "This was only the first wave. They'll be back stronger and smarter. We need to prepare together. Human adaptability and Zetherian power can win, but only if we trust each other." The council agreed. Plans began for joint training, shared technology, and a defense pact unlike anything Zithera had seen. Later that night, Lyra met Kale in the quiet palace gardens. Moonlight reflected off the crystal pools as soft winds carried the scent of alien flowers. "You were right," Lyra said. "Perfection is not enough. Your people survive because you know how to bend, how to change when the world demands it." Kale looked at the stars. "And your people have something we don't: unity, focus. Together we can stop whatever's coming." Lyra smiled faintly. "Commander Kale, you've shown us what lies beneath your armor. Perhaps one day you'll see what lies beneath ours." Above them, in the silent darkness of space, fragments of the destroyed carrier drifted past Zithera's moons. But among the wreckage, a single probe slipped away unseen, carrying data back to whoever commanded the machines. The throne room of Virelia was filled with silence. Only the soft hum of the crystal pillars could be heard. Hundreds of alien nobles and soldiers stood in disciplined rows, their shining silver armor reflecting the blue light of the hall. All eyes were on Princess Soraya, standing at the far end of the room, her golden crest shimmering with authority. And in the center, guarded by 2 towering warriors, stood Captain Elias Kane, the lone human who had dared to travel so far into the unknown. His uniform was torn, his left arm bruised, but his back was straight and his gaze steady. Soraya raised her voice, calm but sharp. "You saved my life on the battlefield, human. And now you stand before my people, who still do not know if you are friend or foe." "I am neither," Elias said firmly. "I am just human, and that is enough." A murmur spread through the audience. No one spoke so plainly to the royal court. The Varelians were used to bowing heads and long speeches filled with flattery. But this man from Earth, who had no armor, no crest, no titles, spoke as if he owed them nothing. Scifi stepped closer, her eyes curious. "Then tell us, Captain, why do you fight with such courage for someone you barely know? Why do you risk your life for another species?" Elias's words were clear. "Because where I come from, it's not about species. It's about people. If someone needs help, you help. If someone is trapped, you free them. That's the only armor I need." A ripple of surprise passed through the alien court. To them, loyalty was earned only through bloodline or command. No warrior would risk his life for a stranger. Yet here was a man who had crossed a galaxy to save one alien princess simply because he felt it was right. Scifi studied him carefully. "So that is what lies beneath your armor. Not metal, not bone, but heart." Elias smiled faintly. "Exactly." Before anyone could respond, the massive doors of the throne room burst open. A breathless messenger rushed in. "Your Highness, the Karax fleet has broken through the outer defenses. They will reach the palace in minutes." The nobles panicked. Some shouted for the princess to retreat to the inner vaults. Others demanded that Elias be imprisoned at once, fearing he was part of the attack. Scifi raised her hand, silencing them. Her gaze locked with Elias. "Can you still fight?" Elias nodded. "Always." The battle for Varelia's palace was fierce. Alien soldiers in polished armor fought to hold the crystal gates, while the black ships of the Karax rained fire from the sky. Scifi took command personally, her golden spear flashing as she led her royal guard. But the enemy was overwhelming, wave after wave of dark-armored warriors charging through the shattered halls. Elias stood shoulder to shoulder with the Varelian soldiers, wielding nothing but a plasma rifle he'd taken from a fallen guard. His training from Earth's special forces showed in every move, precise, fearless, unyielding. "Hold the line," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "If we fall back now, they take the throne." Even the alien warriors found themselves obeying his commands. His courage was infectious, not because he was the strongest, but because he refused to back down even when death seemed certain. At the height of the battle, the massive Karax warlord crashed through the main gate, swinging a blade taller than a man. His armor was black as night, his voice deep as thunder. "Surrender the princess!" Scifi stepped forward. "Never." Before the warlord could strike, Elias leapt between them. The clash was brutal, sparks flying, stone shattering. Elias fought with speed, ducking under the warlord's heavy swings, striking at the gaps in his armor. But the alien brute was too powerful. One mighty blow sent Elias crashing to the floor. The warlord raised his blade for the final strike. "Elias," Scifi cried. But before the blade fell, Elias rolled aside and drove his plasma rifle point-blank into the warlord's exposed chest plate. The blast lit the hall with searing blue light. The warlord roared, staggered, and fell. The enemy forces hesitated. Their leader was down. In that single moment, Scifi shouted to her warriors, "Drive them out!" The Varelians charged with renewed fury, forcing the invaders back through the gates. The palace was saved. When the fighting ended, Elias stood beside Scifi in the ruined throne room. The nobles bowed their heads in respect, not just to their princess, but to the human who had fought like one of their own. Scifi looked at Elias, her voice soft but filled with pride. "Today, you showed my people what true strength is. Not the strength of weapons, but the strength of a heart that protects others." Elias wiped the soot from his face and gave a weary grin. "Guess that answers your question about what's beneath this armor." Scifi smiled, her golden crest gleaming even in the damaged hall. "And my answer is this. You are welcome among us, not as a guest, but as an equal." Weeks later, as the palace was rebuilt and peace slowly returned, a grand council was held. The leaders of Virelia formally signed an alliance with Earth. For the first time, two worlds promised to stand together against any threat. Elias stood off to the side, uncomfortable with all the ceremony. But when Scifi approached him, wearing Her royal armor polished to perfection, she spoke quietly so only he could hear. "Do you wonder what's beneath my armor, Captain?" she asked with a teasing smile. Elias chuckled. "I already know. A heart as brave as any human's." She extended her hand, not as a princess to a soldier, but as one warrior to another. "Then let us fight side by side as friends." He took her hand firmly. Always. And in that handshake, two very different worlds became something new. Not allies out of fear, but partners out of respect. Humanity had once again shown why it deserved a place among the stars.